Okay, well, welcome everyone. It is 5:30 and it is November 18th, so I'm going to call the Thurston Conservation District Board of Supervisors November meeting to order here. We are recording this, of course. With us at this point in the meeting, we have Supervisors Helen Wheatley, Betsy DeVreda, Doug Rushton. We have Executive Director Sarah Moorhead, Staff Member Leah Kellogg. We have our legal counsel, Ben Cushman from Schutz Law Group, and myself, TJ Johnson, the chair. With that, the next item on our agenda here is agenda review. There was an updated agenda sent out earlier today by Leah. Are there any changes from the agenda that's been presented to us from either staff or board?
I would like to remove the board meeting minutes from the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll pull those from consent and we'll deal with those immediately after consent. Anything else?
TJ, during the board supervisor reports, you'll give an update on what happened in Spokane?
Yes, I will.
Great, thanks.
Okay, any other changes to the agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
I so move.
Moved by Betsy, is there a second?
Good.
I saw Helen's hand first and then I heard Doug's voice, so we'll give Helen the second there. And we'll move to a vote on the agenda. Betsy?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We've approved our agenda. That then moves us to the consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent at this point. Shore-friendly South Sound Interlocal Agreement 2123 Amendment. The State Conservation Commission Shellfish Cost Share Contract number 17628. And the State Conservation Commission NRI Cost Share Contract number 17977. Is there a motion on our consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved by Betsy. Is there a second?
Aye.
Seconded by-
Second.
Seconded by Helen. Okay, we'll move to a vote on the consent agenda. Betsy?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Okay, sound like you're far, far away. And the chair votes aye. So we have approved consent. That then moves us to item 4, the item that was pulled off of the consent agenda. That was the meeting minutes from October. Betsy.
Leah has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leah.
Thank you. I wanted to double check what your update, what item is that being moved to?
My update? It's just going to come up under board member reports at the end of the meeting on the agenda as is.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so with that, we had an item pulled from consent. So Betsy, the floor is yours.
Okay. So if we can pull that up.
And I am doing that right now.
They're all just pretty little ones. So line 90. Oh, no line. Oh, yeah, there's lines.
All right.
Okay, as well as, there don't need to be commas around as well as, in my opinion.
Okay.
Line 118, summary is misspelled.
Okay.
And line 129 should be lodging, not logging.
Yes.
Here we go.
That's all I saw.
Okay, with those changes, would you like to make a motion, Betsy?
Yes, I move to approve the board meeting minutes from October 28. Is that the date?
Okay, moved by Betsy, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by David, and welcome, David. David
Thank
Ayala
you.
has just joined us here. So we'll move to a vote on those minutes. Betsy,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Helen,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. We have approved the October 28th minutes. Next item on our agenda is public comment. This is a time for any member of the public who wishes to address the board to do so for up to 3 minutes. Do we have any members of the public with us tonight that wish to address the board? I don't see any on my screen, but I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to address us.
There are no members of the public present.
That is what I see, and hearing no one, I will say that we have no public comment tonight. We have now closed public comment period, which moves us to partner reports. First up here is NRCS. We got a written report from Robin Buckingham earlier today, who indicated that he would not be with us tonight. But if there's any questions or people need additional follow-up, Robin has invited you to contact him. So we'll move then to item B, the State Department of Ecology partner report. I see Elena here tonight. Welcome. Do you have an update for us?
Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and able to stay cozy. It's gotten quite cold. I have a couple updates for you all. Number one is that our grant cycle the wheel continues to turn, and we are receiving 8 applications for non-point activity projects and requesting approximately $2.8 million. And the draft offer list is expected to be published by January 20th. Secondly, our department has proposed changes to Chapter 173-201A for the Washington Administrative Code for the water quality standards. These changes have a goal of ensuring that there are adequate oxygen levels and habitat conditions for salmonoids at their critical early life stages, and that is open for public comment until December 16th. The last thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that we receive a lot of reported environmental concerns, and since anything that has to do with water quality and pollution that would be a threat to water quality, we receive. However, we don't always have the resources to take on something on a level such as homeless encampments. However, we do receive them and we do respond to complaints to the best of our ability. And, we don't work in a vacuum. We recognize that our efforts are affected by such activities. And so we would like to inquire if any of you have an idea of if there's someone in Thurston County or someone in the community that keeps tabs on the geographic locations of such activities. So I just would like to throw that out there, ask if anyone has any ideas.
I'm not exactly clear on what you're asking.
I am asking if anyone on the board or present in the meeting is able to provide information on where homeless encampments are, so that when we go out and do watershed assessments and try to mitigate pollution sources, we're able to understand all of the inputs, and knowing where they are can affect our ability to respond. Does that make any more sense, Doug?
Yeah, it does. I think there's one thing you might not be totally aware of. We're non-regulatory, and we kind of, while we would like to help, I think, at least I would like to help, that would impinge on our non-regulatory part. I know that sounds kind of picayune, but
she's
the
just
philosophy.
asking if we know of any agency or any
Right.
That wasn't
entity.
done.
I do know someone personally that I will inquire with.
Well,
Okay.
Elena, are you asking for the county as a whole? Like, or different jurisdictions? Because, for the most part, most of the cities, if you talk to city staff, they'd have a pretty good idea, I think, for any of the cities in the county. But if you're asking about other nonprofits, there's probably a list of them depending on where in the county you're wanting to look. So I'd be happy to follow up on that a little bit with you.
Okay, great. I will send you an email, Helen, and kind of give you an idea of where I'm focused. But our staff work all over Thurston County.
Yeah.
But those are
This
really
is
good.
This is Doug again. I'd just like to caution the board to not say you're doing it for the district, because that's a precious thing. I think doing it individually is great.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to have a conversation with you about that on the side.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Helen.
Okay. Thank you for joining us this evening. You're welcome to stay, and you're also welcome to go do other things if you need to do that as well.
Thanks, TJ.
That moves us on to item 6C, which is a State Conservation Commission report. Jean is not here tonight, so there is no report. There was nothing submitted in writing that I saw, so we'll move past item 6C, and we'll move to 6D and E, the NACD, WACD updates. Doug, as usual, submitted updates in writing, but do you have anything to add to your written updates, Doug?
Yeah, just a couple, and it's nothing we can do anything about it right now, but it's something I think to be aware of, particularly for Sarah. We heard from MRSC, who does legal advice for us and other districts around the state, and they went over the Open Public Meetings Act and public disclosure and that sort of thing. And they pointed out that we need to be very, very clear on which staff is a municipal officer under Chapter 42.23. So if we've delegated anything to, like, Sarah or Nora as our elections officer, that we might want to make sure we're in line with the requirements there. And they also advised, and this is different from my experience, that receiving gifts or gratuities, even de minimis, aren't acceptable anymore. You have to be really careful with that. That's it. I will have a comment on the resolution on the election thing, though. It's kind of related to this, but it can wait.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you, Doug. Any questions for Doug?
I have a quick question. Doug, if you have anything to share about the municipal officer RCW, I'll look into that and see how that relates to delegated authorities at the district. If there's any MRSC guidance that was provided, I can also follow up on that. But if you have anything specific that you received in that, please send my way.
And I would also add that on that issue of de minimis gifts, if this is a change from long-standing policy, I'd like to see it in writing and get a little bit more information about that, just so that all of us can operate legally, because if it's changed, and it's been a long-standing practice that de minimis gifts have been acceptable in certain circumstances, if that's changed, we need to know the details on that.
Yeah, they didn't explain it very well, but that's what I got out of it, that there was a change in it, and it's, like you say, TJ, it's been a long-standing practice.
I can follow up on that and do some research too.
Okay, thank you. And maybe it'd be worth asking Ben if he knows anything about this as well.
I haven't heard anything about this, but it's something I can look at, and I can go to the MRSC site and see if they have something that points me in the right direction. I'll talk to Sarah about it and see which one of us should do which piece of looking into that.
Great, thank you both. Okay, with that then, we will move past
I
partner
have a
report.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betsy, go ahead.
What is de minimis?
It essentially means it's of such little value that you don't need to report it, and it's not likely to influence your decision-making. That, in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Chocolate will influence my decision-making.
Coffee sometimes gets me, but yeah. Okay, so let's then move on to item 7, which is the staff presentation and an update on our JEDI work. And Sarah's going to take the lead on this.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to apologize that this isn't going to be as beautiful and colorful as a lot of our graphs and videos that you've seen recently in some of these, because this is definitely focused on sort of a higher level update of the work that we've done within this last year in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, really looking at the district internally and how we display ourselves externally, making some changes that we can make, and also tracking a lot of the great work that David and the rest of the WACD DEI committee is doing. And then after a high level overview and kind of reviewing some of those tools and recommendations that WACD has, we've identified or I've identified some areas for 2022 work, and then I'd love to have a little bit of discussion with the board. So that's a lot of things to cover in a short amount of time. Can you see my PowerPoint screen?
No, we still have the agenda up at this point.
Okay, let's try that again. How about now?
Still have the agenda.
Well, we'll stop altogether and try that again.
There you go.
Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Great. So if you'll recall, this conversation started last year. The staff largely identified a need to look at our district sort of holistically and how we serve our community. Are we reaching a diverse amount of people? Are our programs accessible? Are our services really in line with meeting all members of the community that would like to participate in them? Do we have a diversity of perspectives coming into the organization? And sort of looking top to bottom at how we do business. That information went to the board in the middle of last year. And then the board provided some direction to staff earlier this year and said, take a look at what we're doing internally, take a look at what types of things we have power and control to change and support in the meantime, recognizing that this WACD committee process was taking place and would come out with some recommendations later this year. Those recommendations came out earlier this fall and were just recently, as of this week, adopted by the full WACD directors, officers, and directors. So we'll look at some of those too and what they might do for TCD. So at a really, really high level, the areas of focus that we've reviewed this year are outreach strategies, really revamping and looking at where is our existing outreach going? Who are we reaching with those existing methods? Who are we not reaching with those existing methods? What methods and best practices can we identify that can reach underserved populations? What additional partner networks? What additional software platforms and programs? You know, sort of looking at that holistically and trying to fill those gaps. In addition, our educational opportunities, a lot of our work in the last year and a half has been virtual. It's provided a lot in terms of accessibility for folks that are unable to get to in-person programs and events. It's also offered us the use of enhanced technologies too, closed captioning features, offering workshops in Spanish translation, those types of things. So it's offered an additional element of accessibility. With that, of course, we've coupled that with a lot of accessibility changes to our website. That work began a few years ago and continues to build. It's accessible in multiple different languages. It's accessible for hearing impaired. It's accessible for certain elements of vision impairment. So making our public information interface more accessible to more community members has been a great success. In addition, our hiring practices, we've done a fair amount of hiring in the last year and a half as well. And so we've really, especially in our latest hires, revamped that process. And we've really looked at how is our traditional process and those traditional practices, how are those barriers to diverse populations? We've looked at things like requirements, job requirements. Focusing solely on academic requirements might be missing a lot of really great candidates from diverse backgrounds with different experiences that are relevant to the work we do at the district and would bring, just a lot of wealth and opportunity for us. So revamping that and valuing different types of experiences, volunteer service, family experiences, other types of work history experiences, in addition to academic experiences and certifications. We looked at our hiring approach. Where are we sending these job announcements? Again, that falls under kind of our outreach strategies. We looked at how are job announcements written? How might they be targeting certain populations or catering to certain populations and excluding others? How might they feel like they're geared towards a specific type of candidate versus a broad type? So we've done a lot of transformation in that work. We've adopted a robust hiring statement about a diversity of candidates and the type of culture that we want at TCD. We've also started to focus on training. We've done a lot of research, introduced a lot of articles and research amongst the staff team. Particular individuals who are working on a lot of this internally have also done an additional amount of research themselves into best practices for organizations like ours. And more trainings are coming out all the time. I have a great one coming up in 3 weeks that looks at the cross section of DEI and climate change that I'm really looking forward to. So as those have become available, we've been identifying those and taking advantage of them. We have some staff right now. Oh, yes, Doug.
Did you envision supervisors being available to that training too?
Absolutely. I can certainly send that. I'll send that out to everyone. It's available. I believe this one is through Endurus. So yes, I would love to send that out. I think it's on December 7th, midday. Yeah, no problem. In addition, we're working with other partners, both at just a small scale, as well as regional scales, looking at accessibilities to programming and larger outreach strategies in our region, like through Puget Sound Partnership or our local Sentinel Landscape. We've developed a lot of new partnerships through this work naturally, like the Hockey Farmers Collective that focuses on supporting BIPOC farmers, CLO, which focuses on expanding training and services for Latino and Latina populations, as well as continuing to build and strengthen partnerships, like our existing tribal partnerships. Where are new areas that we can provide training opportunities, or as recently as this morning, I had a great meeting with David about how we can support the tribe in expanding agricultural efforts and looking at future, apprenticeship possibilities for apprenticeship programs. That's an area that we're also looking at how we can support in the CTE realm, which is career and technical education. So looking at K-12, we have a lot of funding and support for our South Sound Grading program too, to expand and adapt a lot of their training resources and lessons to include more climate justice for diverse populations, as well as more support for a diversity of student populations. So there's been a lot of work this year, and when we sort of tally it all up at the end, it's really great to see what we've been able to do with existing resources at the district. These are some wordy slides, but I wanted to put them on there, and I will send this out to the supervisors. This is a synopsis, a summary that I've pared down a little bit of the WACD recommendations that were approved by the WACD board. I've highlighted some specific components of these sentences in here that I find really relevant and of interest to our conservation district. They've split it out into sort of a 3-year plan. In the first year, 2022, they're looking to make available to interested districts a list of resources and best practices, make sure that there's accessibility to resources and tools for conservation districts that are interested in this work. That would be a great element for us to take additionally and do another layer of review and see what's applicable to our conservation district. The following year, we're looking at securing funding for trainings, and also looking at, doing a lot of work externally to broaden diversity and inclusion in conservation district elections. That one's one that will impact us, of course, but the training components, especially for community engagement and education staff for conservation districts, I found particularly exciting. The third year, WCD is proposing an organizational assessment addressing their culture and structure, utilizing some external consultants. One of the really great products that they're proposing is that WACD staff will be trained to conduct these similar assessments for conservation districts that are interested. And this is a really important piece because this would dramatically reduce costs associated, I think, for conservation districts looking to get support in this work and have this similar assessment done. So it makes these tools and practices really accessible for conservation districts. And this, I think, is something that we were really hoping that WACD would be able to pool as a statewide entity, these resources, and make them accessible for conservation districts. And so I'll pause just for a quick moment and just see if David, as a committee member, wants to add anything to those elements that I've shared, or if I've mischaracterized anything. Certainly, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, Sarah, I think what you said is great. And I know Thurston Conservation District, we do a great job, I think, of being diverse and trying, getting the word out as best we can. One thing I do want to add, and one thing that I talked about, especially during our subcommittee meetings, was elections. Our election process is pretty narrow, I think, a narrow scope that we really get participation from. And I would like to see us work more on finding ways to go around that, get more people involved in the election process, more, I guess, more people trying to be members of the board, things like that. I think it'd be interesting, I know we have an election coming up. I don't think we'd probably get this implemented now, but it would be interesting, I think, to have like an exit interview, not interview, but at least a questionnaire of what kind of people are coming to actually vote for our elections.
Yeah, thank you, David. That is definitely an area of increased awareness all the way around, but especially diversity of awareness is really key in elections. Some of the proposed, oh, Helen, go ahead.
Oh, well, I don't know, maybe you're going to get to this with proposed next step, but I am wondering, has there been much thinking about the boards of supervisors in particular and things that they can or should be doing, like with these tools and resources? Are they sort of useful for, all the way, are they useful for supervisors as well? is this something that we need to talk about some more? Is our role as supervisors and the board?
Yes, is the short answer is I'm hoping that this is the very preliminary presentation of this information that's going to spur a lot of discussion by the board about what the board's role, interest, and intent is now and in the coming years. That's the last slide I have, is really turning it back to the board for some discussion. Definitely some of the proposed next steps that I've identified are: one, let's review and make good use of those WACD tools and resources and trainings all the way across the organization, board, staff, and otherwise. Let's do that and then identify what gaps might still exist. Where are those tools and resources focused? Is there anything missing that we want to further invest in or define? Just like David mentioned, elections and diversity of candidates interested in participating in the district and governance of the district is a priority area. These are the types of things that I'm really looking forward to hearing from the board. Continuing to build equity in our programming, making sure that programs and services are accessible for everyone. That's just something that we're actively doing every day, I feel like, but a constant reminder. Continuing to engage diverse perspectives. This one, again, is anything from, stakeholder groups, impacting our programming, to our Citizens Advisory Committee, to our Board of Supervisors. So making sure that the voices coming in that are directing our district's business at any level, are representative of our entire population. And then integrating that into our annual and strategic plans. As you probably saw in the proposed 2022 budget, we've included a dollar amount again for JEDI work, and that is something that we can use to continue this work at the staff level and integrating these tools and resources, but also looking externally. And so that's an area where I'd love to hear some more conversation, discussion by the board. Now or for the future, but what are your goals for the next year, and what are your goals beyond then, kind of in this JEDI realm? And so that's what I have for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, and really I hope what this did was spur some thoughts and discussion for you guys as a Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Thoughts or questions for Sarah from the board?
Yeah, Doug.
Great presentation, and I'm so proud of Thurston CD for being a leader in this stuff. Been to the area meetings around the state and also the board meeting on last Monday, and there's a lot of people that don't think there's an issue, and I'm hoping that they're not going to raise hell at the business meeting. One of the things we tried a few years back, and it may be a good time to try it again, was having board meetings at different locations around the county. And for Betsy's benefit, we actually had one in Rochester, had one in Tenino, out in Yellam, just to try to engage people more. And I could see maybe have one at Nisqually or some other place, but go into the community rather than having them come to us.
I like that idea. Especially if we can, directly somehow, get them to attend. That's the hard part. People don't particularly get drawn into meetings. They're not excited about it, but if we had, one person that maybe would connect with even 5 people to get them to just come and hear what we do. Although I have to say, coming to our board meetings, we'd have to set some time. I guess you're suggesting we would set some time aside to welcome them and have a conversation with them.
So it kind of reminds me of when we were going through the public outreach on our strategic plan. We had some meetings outside of our normal locations that were, I'd say, pretty sparsely attended. And that was to me, that was a more compelling thing. Somebody can come and say, this is what I want you to do, or this is what I don't like, or I do like. But I think I agree with you, Betsy. Board meetings, who wants to go to a board meeting? Even if it's across the street.
I see
Yeah.
Helen has her hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, I mean, for next year, I think what would make the most sense really would be to do a little bit of committee work and really dig into those resources and see what they tell us before we decide on what we want to do. And I think part of that would also be talking more closely with you, Sarah, particularly about the partnerships aspect of, what that's a way that the board can really be helpful, is helping to build those partnerships. So that would be my proposal. And of course, you can't make a proposal without offering to be on it. But I would propose that we create a subcommittee of the board to dig into this for 22 and come up with some proposed actions.
Just a clarification, Helen. So a subcommittee of the board, or adding board representation to the existing staff committee?
Well, I mean, it could be both, but I think I'm interested in thinking about specifically how the board can approach this.
Okay.
What the board can do. So I guess I'm proposing that there would certainly be a connection with all the other Jedi stuff going on, but that we try to focus on the board specifically and things that it can do. Just an idea.
I think it's a rational starting point, and after we go down the road a ways, and if we need to change it, we can change it.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I want to follow up on David's suggestion about figuring out who's involved in our election process. I think that's a really good idea, David. And I'm wondering if in this upcoming election, if we couldn't try to pilot something there and just, we have our ballot, but what if we had like an extra section on the ballot that was optional, that we could collect some basic demographic information from people who are voting, basically, sort of what age bracket they're in, what part of the community they live in, some really basic kind of stuff, maybe some ethnic diversity stuff. That might give us just a starting point, a little bit of information. Of course, it would have to be optional, but I would be interested in kicking that over to our election supervisor, Nora, and seeing if that's something that we could accomplish as part of this upcoming ballot process. And I'm seeing a couple heads nodding here, like maybe that's a good idea. I get a thumbs up from David and a heads nod from Helen.
Yeah, I like the idea because it seems like we talk to the same people over and over and over again, and those are the ones that show up. So we need to have some data to support branching out, I think. I think it's a good idea. At least try it.
So, Sarah, can you take that back to Nora and see if the feasibility of doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely assess that with the multiple elections legal bodies that we work with, both our internal counsel and the commission and our local auditor's office as well, just to make sure that is something that we can accomplish. That sounds great.
Great, thank you.
I guess I would like to add a little bit of skepticism. I guess I feel like we probably have a pretty good sense already. How many, Sarah, do you know how many voted roughly in the last election? Less than 500?
No, I would have to see. Typically our elections are between have landed between 500 and about 2,500. That's kind of our sweet spot, is in that realm.
Okay, okay, that is a bigger number than I was thinking. So I guess we would learn something, at least regarding age. I'll be surprised if we find much cultural diversity or.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we find much age diversity actually too. So, but I think that's why we should try to do this is we all have these gut feelings of what we think, but it'd be good to try to validate it with some data if we could.
The downside is it's always, any data is skewed if it's a voluntary survey by those who are willing to fill out the survey and those who don't have time or aren't willing.
Yeah, of course.
I would just assume that we're going to, I mean, I think some feedback would be good, particularly if we make some efforts at more innovative outreach so that we can see if it's working. I mean, if we decide on doing a couple of things differently in terms of the outreach for the election, we'd want to see if it gets results.
That might be another area, Helen, where we can look for some other types of outreach evaluation strategies too, in partnership with other partners. Yeah, I think we could do both and. Yeah.
I wonder if I'm picturing like tabling at the Nisqually Tribal Center and other places like that, the farmers market, etc. But the thing is, often the actual voting is for, one unopposed candidate. And so it's not the most interesting way to engage folks. It'd be great to get people running so we had more people running and more choices, and that'd be huge.
Okay, any other thoughts on this Jedi topic? We probably need to move on, but we've given some direction to Sarah to look into some things here. Anything further on this?
Good job of putting it together, and thanks, David, for your engagement in the WACD thing.
Okay, thank you all. That moves us on to item 8, which is resolution 2021-07, which is our elections resolution for the 2022 election. I will note here before giving it back to Sarah for any other comments that she and I talked the other day, and I thought it would be a good idea to add a date in here for when people could start filing. We had an end date that cut off the filing, but it wasn't clear when people could start filing. So that's now been added into this resolution, and that date would be tomorrow, I believe, the 19th. So it would just be clear to people that after we pass this tonight, you can start putting your paperwork in any point after tomorrow up until January 21st. Other than that, there haven't been many changes since we looked at this at the work session. I'll stop there. And Sarah, is there anything you want to add to this?
There is actually. I did receive some proposed changes. Most of them were grammatical from Betsy earlier today. A reminder, to change through to through, as well as a proposed revision. So those were non-consequential but important. But to remove this line from the resolution, which I've highlighted and here, which does not really add, it's sort of an unnecessary sentence that was just a carryover from the commission template, because the next sentence is the consequential one, which is the postmark date. So as not to confuse voters, Betsy proposed striking that, but I wanted to bring that to the board since it was a proposed deletion of some of the content.
Okay, that's very clear and a good catch, I think, Betsy. Thank you. Any board questions or comments on this? Or if not, I would entertain a motion.
I see Doug has
Yeah,
his hand
I've got
up.
my hand up.
Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
I think we need to be clear in the fourth paragraph on interested candidates. It's got a filing deadline mentioned there too. So the wording with what you wanted to add, TJ, needs to be sure that it doesn't cause confusion with this. But in the middle of the paragraph where it says the filing deadline for candidates.
Yeah, so the sentence that I added was the prior sentence. We can begin filing paperwork here. The final deadline is January 21.
I would combine those two personally to make it shorter, but anyway, that's fairly trivial. The other thing,
I think you're right though, Doug.
I think the other thing is, from that MRSC thing, I think Nora is a municipal officer because we've delegated stuff through Sarah to her. And I think the delegation says Nora White, whereas the resolution says Nora Carmen White. So I think we need to be consistent and maybe do another designation as her being the elections person. Make sure they're consistent.
I don't know that so there's not any specific delegated authority to Nora outside of this resolution that we adopt annually. So this one would replace the one that we adopted last year, delegating this authority to her with her revised last name. It's not in any other place.
Okay, I was assuming it was. I'm mistaken there.
I think the conduit that you're envisioning is the delegation of authority in general to myself, to the executive director and the treasurer, but it's by position and not by name, which is helpful.
Well, I think this delegation to her as the elections person, I think that makes her a municipal officer.
Okay.
Anyway, another thing to ask MRSC.
I'd like to go back to Doug's previous suggestion. I've got some proposed wording changes to combine those two sentences that we were just talking about the dates. So it would read, candidates may file their candidacy paperwork. Candidate may file their candidacy paperwork beginning January 19th, etc. And then the next sentence should be changed to say, the deadline for candidates to file the required information is. Okay, any other changes to this before we move towards a motion and action? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
What are you moving, Doug?
I move to adopt resolution 2021-07 as modified.
Okay, moved by Doug. I think I heard Betsy second that.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll take a vote there. Doug?
Yes.
Betsy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So we have approved that resolution, and the games begin tomorrow. I will also note at this point that because the position in question is the position that I currently hold, I have decided to give another go at this game. So I will be filing paperwork to take another term with y'all on the board if the public will have me.
That's good news.
Okay. That then moves us on to budget. Item 9, looking at an update to the unrestricted budget, and then the first look at the restricted budget. So Sarah, you're up on this?
Great. I am pulling that up and minimizing it so we can see it on one screen. Okay, can everyone see something that says proposed 2022 consolidated budget?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. 18 months later and we are getting the hang of Zoom. So on this one, this is what you received in your board packet. This consolidated budget is always our cover sheet that shows all of our unrestricted and restricted expenses and income so that you can get a good sense of the overall budget in total. It's now 2 pages because we've had a lot of growth over the last couple of years. We won't focus too much on those pages at this moment. I do want to draw your attention to
Can I
some of,
stop you though, real quick? I
please,
just wanted to note that there's a typo
where?
since we do that.
Sure.
Line 26, expenses.
Oh,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't,
We're.
Oh, maybe you fixed it, or did you fix it all right? No, yeah, you need an S there. You need to replace the C with an S.
I thought they were using the British spelling.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. Well, and it's pence. These are all pence.
there we go. I will say that Susan did live in England for a period of time. We will get that fixed. I can't
well,
edit
no
this.
matter. I mean, we can be bicultural.
I will. What, Doug?
Nothing, it was a smart aleck comment that didn't help anything.
Well, keep them coming. It's entertaining for sure. No. I do want to draw the board's attention to one of the changes that we made in the proposed unrestricted budget, and that is in our, I guess, 2 changes overall. One is a great modification that TJ proposed, which is this program allocation category up here, climate change adaptation and mitigation and other strategic plan priorities. It said other combined priorities, which was a little bit confusing about what priorities are being combined, but it's other strategic plan priorities. So again, this is work that spans multiple of the above strategic plan priorities in addition to climate change, which also spans multiple above strategic plan priorities. So that was a really great suggestion. The other component that I wanted to draw your attention to immediately is we had a conversation at our last board meeting about board travel and conferences and training fees. And so what we did here is sort of split the difference in travel costs and in conferences and training fees for around $5,000, which would allow each supervisor to have about $1,000 of conference fees / travel expenses. We based that number off of some of the recent travel costs with the Spokane conference that TJ went to. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention that we adjusted the budget to include that in there, and see what the board's thoughts were about whether or not that was sufficient. Certainly if we are unable to spend that, we can adjust that throughout the year, throughout the coming year, if that is not being utilized by, any one or multiple supervisors, or if there's an opportunity of greater cost, the board can allocate that differently amongst themselves as well. That was really the biggest change, was absorbing that and recognizing that priority of the supervisors in there. The budget is currently balanced here. Are there any questions from the board on the unrestricted update?
Hear any?
Right.
Pretty clear, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we will move then to our proposed restricted budget. Again, these are all of our anticipated contracts and agreements that we either are midstream with currently, or that we will be approving by the end of this year. we have definitely grown significantly, and I just want to take a moment to reflect on that. As we've been beginning or gearing up to begin our audit this year, part of that is some preliminary question and answer and data aggregation. I am really pleased to share with the board that in the last 2 years, our district has grown from a budget of around $680,000 to over 2 million. And most of that, again, is due to our staff's hard work at grant writing and project development. And all of that money is going back out onto the ground to change the landscape and support the people that steward it. So I'm really proud of our staff there. And I just wanted to recognize that rapid growth in our conservation district. So are there any specific questions about the proposed restricted budget? Again, these are all of our grants and agreements with funders and other partners.
I have a question. Well, could you talk a little about how these colors break and I see there's a code at the left that, you know, the R and the W. So could you just talk a little about those breakdowns?
Yeah, absolutely. That is all for the management side of these agreements and the expenses coded to these agreements in our accounting program and amongst our staff team. So you'll see, for example, all of these orange colored agreements here in the middle. It's the second color block on your screen. Those are all agreements that come via the Conservation Commission. So regardless of where the funding comes from, mostly through the state legislature, it all comes to us through an agreement with the State Conservation Commission.
Those are the W's?
Those are all the W categories. That's correct. For WSCC, all of the W categories. Similarly, the blue one above is that's through RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Office. Those are all the R categories. These codes here are to code individual contracts and agreements within our accounting software within QuickBooks as we code expenses. It's also what staff code individual, purchases if we need to buy some plant protectors for a planting project. So it allows us to track all of the different bits of moving pieces of each of these projects, including our staff time. Every hour we spend is coded to one of these codes over here on the left. And then that's what lets us aggregate those invoices that we submit to those funders for reimbursement. So it's our internal coding system. Both the numbers and the color blocks here are for ease of access so that we can see where these funding agreements are coming from. TC right here in purple is Thurston County. These sort of pink ones here that have varying codes or say new, those are sort of miscellaneous or one-off contracts. You see orange here is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Green down here is Department of Ecology. And then the bottom green one is foundational grants to South Sound Green.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I much appreciate you having line numbers. Some of us have trouble with the colors. So having line numbers and the codes really helps.
Good. I'm glad.
Okay, so we've now looked at both the restricted and the unrestricted budgets over the last couple of months. And the next step for this would be to put this budget on our agenda for action at December 16th meeting so that we can adopt a budget prior to the beginning of the new year. So if there are any additional questions or comments, changes, thoughts after this meeting, certainly direct those to Sarah. But as it stands now, this will be the budget that comes forward to us on December 16th for action. Okay, with that, let's move on to item 10, our standing COVID update. Sarah, is there anything to report this month?
Nothing new to report at this time. We are just being mindful as proclamations come out, as decisions are made at the federal level, and any impacts that that may have on any of the grant funds that we have, or any of the projects or contractors that we work with. Ben's been really great at helping us to stay apprised of that and being mindful as we move forward. No significant update at this time, but just continuing to watch the world and make sure that we are resilient and adapting.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's then move on to item 11, governance. First up here is an update on the Conservation Education Center.
Yeah, at this time, we are in the process of working with our consultants to refine those sort of stakeholder interview questions to make that I mentioned we would start working on after the last board meeting to make sure that we are asking the right types of questions to get the right type of data back to our consultants to include in their feasibility analysis. It's definitely been a busy time, and I'm looking forward to wrapping up other pieces so we can really delve into that work. I was hoping that's sort of the status update for the CEC at this point from the staff angle. I was actually wondering if TJ, you wanted to take some of this time to give some of your updates, or if you'd like to stick with the time that you have in your supervisor report.
No, I think that's fine. I'll talk about my experience with the Spokane facility here, and then I'll talk about the conference later under board supervisor reports. So as you all know, I went over to Spokane, 2 weeks ago now, I guess it was, and spent a full 2 hours with the executive director of Spokane CD, Vicki Carter, as well as a supervisor from San Juan CD, who was also previously on the State Conservation Commission. I believe her name is Lynn. Is it Barrick or Byrick?
Barrich.
Barrich, okay. And she was there because San Juan is looking to do some sort of much scaled down version of what we're thinking about. But Vicki gave us a full 2 hours and walked us through the entire history of what they've done over there, and it's really nothing short of remarkable. They've taken a 50-acre former gravel pit and asphalt facility, and they've got a 10-year plan to develop this into this just absolutely amazing facility. And they're, I think, in year 2 of actually, well, this is their first year of being housed in the facility. So they built a brand new building that's absolutely beautiful and highly functional. It's just everything about the design made sense and was a good reflection on the values of conservation in terms of the materials they used. The spaces just struck me as being very productive spaces that staff could use in a variety of ways, that the public could use and their partners could use in a whole variety of ways. And I got to say, up until this point, I sort of was leaning towards the idea that as we move forward, maybe new construction wasn't the best approach, but I've kind of changed my mind about that now. I've been involved in projects in the past where we've taken buildings that were something in the past and then tried to retrofit them to be what you want in the future, and it never quite gets exactly what you want. And so I'm actually much more inclined now towards thinking about new construction, both because it gets you what you want, but it also can be a demonstration of values and some of the elements of what we're trying to embody as a conservation community. So the building itself is beautiful. The grounds, they've begun a 10-year build out of grounds. They've got hiking trails for the public to use. They've got an amazing nursery where they can propagate and hold all of the plants they use for their plant sales. They have ponds where they're showing pond restoration, and they have endangered frogs there, apparently. So it's a habitat for an endangered frog. It's just really a cool facility. And I talked a lot with Vicki about the financing of this thing. And one of the takeaways from that is they talked to some conventional lenders who really didn't get what a conservation district was and what this vision was. But they wound up getting it financed really easily through a local credit union, through a commercial division of a local credit union. And that really struck me as interesting because we have a number of those here. We also have local banks like Olympia Federal here who understand our community and have been rooted here for a long time. So I think when we start thinking in terms of financing, I'll certainly be pushing for local financing as opposed to some larger commercial bank that really may be harder to finance because they don't understand who we are and what we do with our community. But it was a really, they're very thoughtful about what they've done over there. They've got a 10-year plan and they do it in sort of 2-year chunks. And this 2 years, they're doing this phase and they got the building done. And then the next 2 years, they're concentrating on habitat restoration. And then the next 2 years. And ultimately, by year 10, they're going to build a mixed-use housing facility, low-impact development housing facility on that site. So there'll actually be people living on their property in the midst of this amazing environmental restoration project. It's just everything about this made sense to me. And I know we looked at this kind of at a summary level when we met with the Beckwith group as one of our comparables, but boy, if we could do anything half as amazing as what they've pulled off in Spokane, I think it would really be an amazing asset and legacy for our community. And I guess, as much as anything, spending that 2 hours and thinking about this and thinking about what we could do here is what pushed me over the edge to decide I was going to up for another 3-year term, because I think we have this really interesting opportunity now to create a vision over the next 3 years and then take that vision to the county commissioners when rates and charges is up and say, look, we have this compelling vision and all we need is long-term financing to move forward and to do this thing that's just going to be a real asset for the community. So super excited about it, obviously. And if y'all ever get a chance to go over there, I'm sure Vicki would love to show you around the place. And it's certainly worth your time if you find yourself in Spokane. Really a neat project. And any questions or that anybody has, I'd be happy to answer them.
TJ, did you say that was what kind of housing did you say that was on the site?
The plan is to build a low-impact housing development, so demonstrating green technologies in a clustered development that would be not kind of like a subdivision, but something really kind of unique and contextualized within the environment over there.
Do you want to, do you want to talk a little bit more about the building? You said you thought it was really well designed.
Yeah.
Especially that. Yeah. Well, just go ahead.
It was a former gravel pit and quarry. So they used a lot of salvaged natural rock from that site to build the building itself. So it's got this beautiful natural thing, but it's also got tons of light and glass, and it's a very open atmosphere that strikes me. And what I saw as I was walking around is a high level of staff. I was there on a Thursday afternoon before they were putting on a big conference, but I still saw all the staff collaboration in the big workroom and in the little informal workroom. They have a great mudroom space, so when people come in out of the field, there's a great place for them to take off their muddy stuff. They actually have showers there for the staff even to use. And then they also have kind of an outbuilding that they built, which houses their vehicles and supplies. And so each department kind of has this locking gated bay in a covered building that they can, whether it's cover crop seed or whatever they're needing to store dry in the facility. And then, so the existing buildings are their main office building and public meeting space building, and they have a big public meeting room that's accessible to the community and their partners. And then they've got this kind of garage shop area. And then the next building that they're building right now is going to be more of a public space. which they're talking about really innovative things like hosting farmers markets and live entertainment and food trucks, with the idea of this is not just an office space or a place for people to come take a class, but it's a place for the community to gather and experience environmental restoration in a lot of different ways.
And where is it located in relation to the city?
Yeah, so if you're familiar, I'm not super familiar with Spokane, but if you can picture like the South Hill from downtown, it's sort of down on the eastern side of the South Hill, really towards Spokane Valley, in a pretty, I would say sort of lower to middle income neighborhood of older homes, which is why it, had an industrial use previously. But they're really transforming it from an industrial use that wasn't really an asset for the neighbors to something that's going to be an asset for the neighbors. Okay, well, thanks for letting me share that with you. Clearly, I'm excited about it, and to the extent that we can use that as our model or somewhat of a model moving forward, I would encourage us to do that because they just seem to have done it right.
TJ, I had a quick question. Did you and Vicky talk anything about any of the management structures of some of these additional things like the entertainment, amphitheater or the, mobile food truck court? Are these all spaces that the CD themselves is managing leasing contracts with, or are there other entities and businesses and organizations that they're sort of leasing that space to manage?
That's a good question, and I didn't mention that when they bought this property, there was an existing private business on site. So there was a building there already that another business was in, and that business is not only staying on the site, but they have helped them expand that existing building, which creates an income revenue stream for the district. As far as these new things that they're talking about, it's sort of, they haven't fully fleshed it out yet, but I think what I've heard Vicky say is they're looking, the word she used about 100 times is partnerships. So I don't expect they're necessarily going to run the farmers market there or book the entertainment that might play there, or arrange the food carts to do that, but there might be community partners that take on those pieces. She's very clear that they're a conservation district and they do have some boundaries on what they can do, but they're also trying to be a catalyst for community development and economic development with other partners.
I believe that existing business and building that they retrofitted or expanded was the use of their curb application. I think that's where that was applicable in this.
That's exactly what it was. They got money from the curb board, which we've of course talked to help that business expand on the site that they now own.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we should probably move on to the next item. We have another resolution before us tonight. Resolution 2021-08. This is budget development and implementation. This is what we talked about at our last meeting in terms of giving our executive director some additional latitude for managing the budget within categories and priorities approved by the board. So can we put that resolution up, Sarah?
Yeah, can everyone see resolution 21-08?
Nope, we're still looking at the agenda.
Let's try again. How about now?
Yes.
Perfect. I will also mention that Betsy had some great grammatical feedback on this that I've integrated into the resolution. It did not change the content of the resolution itself. Thank you, Ben, so much for providing a lot of the content that's in here. There was a question that Betsy raised as well to carry this resolution forward, just about integrating additional timeline components to the budget implementation process. Is that of interest to the board to define that process? in a little more detail with more timeline steps associated.
Actually, I have to review my notes. I was thinking more about the timeline for the budget development process, the first part.
Great.
Okay, I thought you were saying the implementation.
I
portion.
did. Thank you for clarifying that. So the budget development process piece.
Yeah, it seemed like something was missing. It seemed like it doesn't say when that budget would be due, or is that
Yeah,
necessary to have that in there?
that's definitely up to the board. I'm happy to include something about a deadline of in October annually, or here. That's the beginning of the last quarter when we have a lot of our better numbers to work with to develop a budget draft. So I can add October up here, and then have December as the board adopts a high level budget by December annually.
I would think that it would be good to add the adoption date under item 2, but not to add a timeline on item 1, which would give us the flexibility of maybe we started earlier some years and maybe we started later other years, but we always have it adopted by December.
Yeah, I like that too. I was thinking of doing it on a quarterly basis, but that would work too.
Yeah, that's fine.
But can we say by December 31st, just so it's clear that we do it before the calendar year expires?
Great.
You okay with that, Betsy?
I'm fine with that. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions on this resolution?
I must have a different copy of it. Could you go up just a little bit, Sarah? Copy I have has a thing about resolve that a mail-in election for an open position on a district board.
Yeah, I caught that yesterday in talking to Sarah, so we pulled that out. That was a cut and paste error from our other resolution, Doug.
That's what I figured, but thank you. I would make a motion, Mr. Chair, to adopt resolution 2021-08 as amended.
Okay, it's been moved by Doug. Is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Betsy. We will vote on the motion. Doug?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have approved resolution 2021-08. That then moves us to the last item under governance, which is our draft board meeting agenda for December 16th. As Sarah pulls that up, I will note that I made a request in a conversation with Sarah yesterday that we make it a standing practice to put all executive and closed sessions as the last item of business on our agendas in the future. I think it's easier in the public that way. People that might be interested don't have to wait for us to go to an executive session, then come back to something they might be interested in that's later in the agenda. I think it's standard operating procedure for how I've seen other boards and councils do it. So that's the change I made from the draft that you saw in the packet to the one before us here, and it would be a standard policy going forward unless there's an objection to do that.
No objection. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so with that, December 16th will be our last meeting of the year. I think we've got a bunch of potential contracts and awards on our consent. And Sarah, is there a chance that there might be others that will come yet?
There is a chance that this will be revised both ways, that some of these could still be held up a bit, and we will realize them in January. But yes, there is definitely an opportunity that additional ones will come this way. And so what I'll do is just make sure that as they're received, they're sent to both Ben for legal review and the board for review And I'll make sure that we wrap up a good summary right before the meeting, so we're clear on what's there.
Okay, thank you. All right, so consent agenda, got some contracts, there's some standing items there. Staff presentation to be determined. We will adopt the budget, which we talked about tonight, and I think item 7 could come off of there because we just did that, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay. But we will put the budget resolution on here and adopt our budget in December. Okay, you scroll down again. Standing items, nothing out of the ordinary. We will have another closed session on collective bargaining, it looks like, before then taking a final action, hopefully, to approve the collective bargaining agreement. We will also then have an executive session on performance of the executive director. Just to update the board on that, after our last executive session, I have been following up as directed and contacting external partners for feedback on Sarah's performance. I have one more conversation to have tomorrow, and then that will be complete. I've also collected staff feedback with the assistance of Susan. So I have that in the jar now too. So I'll be able to provide a summary to the board well in advance of the December 16th meeting. Okay, anything else anyone sees that needs to be added or deleted from this December agenda at this point?
I think a good point of clarification for the board would be we will default to our standing work session schedule if that is the desire of the board. I know that throughout the last couple of months, I've heard a couple of comments from individual supervisors around do we need work sessions? We seem to be so efficient in just having a board meeting a month. Is 2 meetings a month preferred and necessary? The second comment that I've heard too is do we want to stick with Tuesday versus Thursday for our work sessions, or do we want to revert to that Thursday if the board would like to see work sessions? So those are not answers you need to answer now, but certainly something that staff would appreciate direction on from the board at the next meeting or before January.
So in that vein, Sarah, could we add an item to this agenda, which would be 2022 meeting schedule? And then we can have that conversation in January and figure out how to proceed. And I'd say as a starting point, since our status quo is a work session and a board meeting, I'd like to see what that calendar looks like for 2022 as a starting point, and we can certainly change or modify it if we feel like we want to.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I see Doug has a hand up.
Go, Doug.
Yeah, this is a trivial point to the rest of you. These Thursday meetings are tough for me because I have a 7:30 conference call every Friday. So if we go to Tuesday, I would like that a little better. Not a big deal. It's not terribly inconvenient. I suggest we add about 5 minutes to talk about the WACD annual meeting, how we thought it went. Comments from participants, that sort of thing.
All right. So we'll treat this as our draft agenda for now, subject to additional modifications over the next month.
Great.
That then moves us to supervisor reports. I will start at the top of my screen here. David, do you have a report?
No report this time.
All right. Betsy?
I have nothing to report.
Helen?
Well, I mean, the TRPC meeting was, I guess the main topics were broadband access. The TRPC is starting to put that together a little more seriously in order to be in a position to go out and look for money, basically. They talked about, I guess this might be of interest, they talked about traffic safety studies. trends, and they're not good. You know, all the traffic safety indicators are getting worse. So there wasn't much discussion, I don't think, of what to do about it, but it was just noted that that's the case.
What exactly does
there
that
wasn't
mean?
well, there was a lot of talk about rural roads and rural highways and problems with them, that it's sort of on the radar for TRPC to be looking at that as part of transportation policy. So, you know, that was good discussion. And there was some discussion of the legislative agenda, and basically it was all freeways all the time. David, were you there? Would that be that right? It was, they were talking about the, there was an agreement that it would just be the Nisqually Bridge project and the I-5. I'm not exactly sure, but there's been kind of a long discussion about Mounts Road area. And those are the only two items that it was agreed to put on the legislative agenda for the TRPC. So that was kind of interesting. I think that was about it. And it doesn't look like there's anything really to highlight about what's coming up at the next meeting.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Doug, do you have anything?
Yeah, two quick items. I just urge you all, if you can, to attend any of the WACD functions that are going on over the next week or so. And also think about going to the NACD annual meeting. It's going to be in Orlando. That doesn't really appeal to me much, but especially right now, but I wanted to bring that up. And on a personal level, I had what they called at the time a farm plan done in 1996, and I'm thinking of updating it because I think we've got a lot of new staff with a lot of new ideas, and could maybe benefit from that.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Doug. I'll talk a little bit about the conference in Spokane, the Food and Farm Symposium. It was very interesting. I've gone to a lot of farm conferences in the past, and they've mostly been small organic farmers and, you know, kind of on the left of the political spectrum mostly. This was very different. There was about 200 people there, and I would say the overwhelming majority of them were large commodity farmers, wheat farmers, farming 500, 1,500, 2,500 acres. And it was interesting because on a number of levels. One is the lack of seriousness with which people seem to take COVID in Spokane was rather shocking. At the beginning of the conference, it was mentioned that we are still under a mask mandate in the state of Washington. And I looked around the room, and maybe about 20% of the people in the room had masks on. And the chair of the conference said, I've announced that, but I'm not the police, so do what you will. And by the end of the conference, maybe 10% of the people were wearing masks. So that was interesting. It was also interesting in that I've never been to a conference sponsored by a public agency that had so much overt religious talk. I was kind of shocked by how many references there were to religion and the religious basis for what people are doing. Was interesting to me. The other thing is the word organic was never used, as far as I could tell, anywhere in the conference. But what was interesting is all of these big commodity farmers who are over there, they all understand the system is broken. It's broken in that it's killing their land. It's broken in that they're going broke. And they're all looking for a different way to farm. And they're not talking about organic, but they're talking about no-till. They're talking about reducing chemical inputs. They're talking about regenerative and biofarming. So even these big guys are kind of catching on that the system's not working anymore from a variety of standpoints. And I thought that was kind of interesting. The one session that I thought was most applicable to my world was they have a Vets on Farms program that they set up through the district over there, that they have military veterans who are now running a small market farm that's owned, was leased by the district, and these are district employees that run the farm. And that was kind of interesting to see what they were doing there. Found that 80% of what they were doing was very similar to what I and other small farms here in Thurston County are doing, organic farms and regenerative farms are doing here in Thurston County. But I thought that was interesting. And then the other kind of takeaway, and one of the reasons I wanted to go is, in the past, Sarah has discussed, or in fact put forward grant applications to create a similar type symposium here in Thurston County. And I tend to think that might be a pretty good idea for us to try to pull off at some point and try to find some funding. Clearly, the topics would be different in Thurston County. We don't have 2,000-acre wheat farms here. But I think the idea of the district putting a really public conference on and engaging a lot of different folks in a conversation is a good idea. And we could certainly put our unique Thurston County spin on it. And I would imagine there's grant money out there that we could pull together to do something like this. So I'm not sure, sort of how to move this forward. But at some point, I think we should have a little conversation and discussion about whether this is something we might want to pull off. Probably not in 2022, since we've got our 75th anniversary harvest thing going, but maybe in subsequent years to try to put something like this together, because I think there'd be some value in doing it. That's all I have. Unless there are questions.
I'm thinking Spokane's bad, but Orlando's going to be way worse. That's just my personal opinion.
Most likely. Okay. With that, we'll move to Executive Director's report. Sarah?
Thanks, TJ. I have a couple of things to share with you, and some of them dovetail with what you just shared naturally. One is, now that we have some consensus and direction to move the budget forward for adoption in December, staff will start to put that budget into annual plan format for the coming year. So you will also be able to see that annual plan at your next meeting, adopt if you wish, or continue for discussion and adoption in January. So we have done both models before, depending on the board's interest in how much discussion is there. So that's a space, again, if there are priorities and goals of the board that can be included in there, with sufficient funding attached. So again, the process of that is what kind of funding do we have available in the coming year, and then pairing that with what strategic plan, goals, and actions does that accomplish, and does that meet, and putting some metrics to that. So I'll go through that process and provide a draft to the board for the next meeting. And then after the new year, staff will aggregate all of the great information, stories, videos, pictures from this year to publish the annual report, so you can see where we're at in terms of progress on that strategic plan. So stay tuned for that. In addition, we've been preparing, especially because it's budget season, for our 75th year Harvest Festival and our schedule of events for the coming year. That's also been oddly coupled with a lot of this data archiving process and project that I mentioned in my report a couple of months back. We've came across a document that authorizes, gives us authorization as an entity to form in 1948. not 1947. So our petition to form as a district was submitted at the end of the year in 1947, and those are the records that we've had at the district for a long time. And institutionally, the information that was passed down to myself and other colleagues of mine at the district from former staff, and who knows, where that came from. But we came across a document, and its official date is in January of 1948. So that triggers a whole lot of emotions and thoughts about this. Next year would technically be our 74th year as a district and not our 75th. So that means we can, that doesn't mean we can't go forward with a harvest festival and some of the great outreach and things that we've envisioned and planned. It does have a little bit of a different spin in terms of the celebratory nature of it. It also will trigger things like we'll need to revise our logo and change the 7 to an 8 in our established section. So yeah, you can giggle, you can cry, you can have all of the emotions. It is one little remnant of shock and surprise from inheriting this position and things from the district. So I wanted to make the board aware of that and share that verbally in an update versus over email in case there was any confusion or questions or concern. We reached out to the Conservation Commission about that too, because they've been heavily involved in this process with us around our 1947 date, and they just don't keep those types of records. So there we are. There we have it. So we were established in 1948, and staff will begin a process of changing all of our information that says 47. So if you see a lot of that new branding come out with 48, that is the reason.
Well, Sarah, as a historian, I appreciate your willingness to go with history instead of myth history, despite the pain. I really appreciate that.
There were a lot of exclamations when that document was uncovered, a lot of emotions by a lot of people, and I had to really just share a lot of empathy with our outreach and education team that has been working hard on planning a 75th year for us next year. But it'll leave us more time to continue to develop that, more time to look for future farm expos and conference things. So bigger and better, it'll be all right. We are resilient. So enough on that. Coupled with that though, as another comment, that our TCD awards program, we've been doing some filming. Nora is going to send you an email tomorrow asking for board participation in some of these films, these little mini video clips that we're using in our outreach and our media communications that are honoring these great award recipients. So stay tuned for that. We would love to have the full board participate. We have 5 awardees. We have 5 supervisors. It's a perfect match.
A state of emergency has been declared in British Columbia in the wake of this.
Sorry. What happened?
Apparently, I'm an emergency in British Columbia. Hopefully, everything is okay there. So stay tuned for that information from Nora. If you're unable to participate for any reason, please let us know. Nora really just needs 10 minutes of your time. She'll come to you. She just wants to record you sharing and honoring these awardees with their award. They won't physically be there again. So there'll be more details in that email. The last thing is I sent the board an email during this meeting following Elena's comment with the proposed WAC revision, which has the draft of that policy revision in addition to, all right, thanks, Elena, which also has the link to comment. This is a particularly delicate change to the WAC. It's changing accessibility of stock watering and whether or not producers need to have surface water rights for stock water. Doug, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's actually an ecology policy that they used to, you could put a water trough out off the stream to get the cows out of the stream. And now ecology is saying, no, you need a water right for that water trough out of the stream. So it's a change in policy, a change in direction.
Right. Thank you, Doug. It is not a whack change. I appreciate that. It is a change in their policy. Elena, do you have a clarification?
Yes, thanks, Sarah, for bringing this up. I wanted to just let you all know that this is still fairly new to our team, and we are still having internal discussions. But if you have any comments to pass on to me, I would be able to bring that to our team here in water quality and our partnerships with our water resources program.
Great, thank you. I'll make a final comment on this to the board because I think that there's some additional board questions or comments related to this too. Again, it definitely applies to livestock producers. There is a potential impact to conservation districts and conservation projects. A lot of what we do in sort of putting in buffers, fencing cattle out of the stream sort of things is putting in nose pumps and things for stock watering. There's always been a provision that, you know, animals have rights to access things like food and water, right, for animal welfare. So I think that's a big concern here is now that this policy sort of removes that ability for animals to access water, which could be really concerning without that water right or access to other water sources like, you know, a well system. So there is a lot of concern about the impacts to agriculture that this might have, therefore the impacts to open space and habitat, as well as to how this impacts our cost share projects and programs that we do and the incentives for producers to implement buffers and fencing. So I encourage you to take a look at it. And Doug, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, still, there is a resolution that was proposed by Stevens County Conservation District out of the Northeast to basically talk with ecology to find out what this means. Is the Eastern Regional Office of Ecology doing their own thing, or is this a new policy? But having the comment stuff that Alina provided to you, Sarah, should help clarify that.
Yeah, the commission sent out a Gov delivery email, which is what I forwarded to all of you with this information, and then with the link to the comment period that's open through the 16th. So our staff is planning on sharing, you know, thoughts and questions through that process about the implementation of this and what this means for conservation projects and producers, existing producers as well. That is all I have. Thank you for letting me take up a lot of time in this report.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. That then moves us on to our closed session. We are about to go into a closed session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations for our second contract with our represented employees. We are allowed to do this under RCW 42.30.140 subsection 4 subsection A. We will be making no decisions in the closed session. However, we will be providing feedback to our negotiating team to move forward to wrapping up that negotiation. We will take no more than 15 minutes in that closed session, at which point we will come back into this public session, report back about the closed session, and then adjourn this public meeting. Participants in the closed session will include all 5 supervisors, our executive director, and our legal counsel, Mr. Cushman. So with that, Sarah, can you give us the mechanics of how we move into this closed session?
Yeah, give me one moment and I will move everybody that you've mentioned into a separate breakout room. I'm going to pause the recording and do that.
Hold down the fort.
Thank you, Leah.
TJ, you're muted.
Thank you. All right, so I see everybody's supposed to be here is here. We have just returned from a closed session to discuss the status of labor negotiations and the collective bargaining agreement. We provided direction to our negotiating team and our executive director, and we took no formal actions. We will come back to this topic in a closed section in December. With that, that concludes our agenda for this evening. And all we need now is a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I move that we adjourn our meeting.
Moved by Helen. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Betsy. Okay, let's vote. Helen,
Aye.
Betsy,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a nice Thanksgiving.